Hello, it's Sarah with House Copper and Cookware, and today we're going to just go over some of the fluxes for tinning that we found helpful over the course of the past several years, working both in the tin and copper shop where we recreate vintage wares, as well as what we use when we are doing mass production tinning in the pots that we create for the shop, for the store. And I'm going to just do this as a tutorial in case you're just figuring out fluxes. This is just our opinion and what has worked for us in different situations during the tinsmithing trade and coppersmithing trade. As always, everyone has their own opinions and experiences, which this is a place I want that to be shared. I'd love to hear about other experiences that people have doing this crafting. So, jumping back in history, before there was chemical flux, the tinsmiths would often use things found in their natural environment. Soap is one of those. You can use soap as a flux in a tight situation. Otherwise, they used this, which is not drugs, looks like drugs. It's pulverized rosin or like pine tree sap. So if you go to your local forest, find a pine tree, and you look for that really clear drip of dried sap and pulverize it with like a mortar and pestle if you're doing this old school, or in a grinder, or with a hammer, and you pulverize it, it becomes rosin flour or just rosin. This is a great way to get your tin solder to run. It's not good for really big applications like when you're tinning the inside of a whole pot, but it works really well for soldering seams. But beware, because of what it is, it will leave a brown residue that can be a real pain in the ass to get off. It usually is kind of like this dried, sticky rosin again on your soldering joint, and then you can pick it off with your fingernails over the course of several movies as you try and get it off, or you sometimes can use like an alcohol to remove it. So that's the old way. The new way is to use different types of chemicals and pastes and liquids. I have used in my time like an OD soldering paste. I don't know if you can read this backwards, but it's a soldering paste. You definitely, if you're going to use this for food, want to make sure it is lead free. A lot of them will say, like, here's another one. It says lead free. You want to make sure your solder is lead free as well as your actual tin solder. But it's going to look like this. It's gooey. It's tough to put on your joints, but a really thick bristle brush will help spread that around. You can also use something like this, which is also a something you'd apply with a wire brush. I'm not going to pop it open right now. It's being a pain in the butt because it's in the shop and it was cold. Sometimes you can get these types of flux with the solder included, so that once you heat it up, it all runs together really well. I personally haven't used it. I don't know many people who do. It's a convenience. It's more expensive to get lead or to get solder and flux combined. Be sure to, and this is a step I used to miss when I started working in tin and copperware, when you're dealing with a soldering iron. So this is for the small joints or the vintage reproduction wares that you might do. You're going to have a soldering iron, or if you're going really old school, you'll have soldering coppers that have, the copper tips on the iron handle with a wooden holding handle that you stick in and out of a brazier or a furnace. Either way, all of those tips, whether they're electronic or they are old school and manual and handheld, you're going to want to clean off the ends of your soldering irons with sal ammoniac. It comes in a block, and this is, I've seen it, so this is the side that I use a lot. And you can scrape this off with like a knife and dilute it in water, and you'll have to play with it, the size of your container. Use a glass, well, ideally like a pottery container, not plastic, and you would scrape this off, combine it with water, and mix it together, and then you kind of have a liquid dip for your iron when you want to clean it off in between applications. Or you can just put your hot iron, so like I use an American Beauty soldering iron, and I will set it on here and really clean off the tip and get it all shiny and silvery again, and then it'll hold the tin solder better when you're trying to use it to apply it to your joints. Another flux that we use, this one is really heavy and it's cold from being outside in the garage. This is an acro flux. It's concentrate, so you can use it like this. It's really kind of gooey. I don't know if you can see that, but it's pretty thick. And Bob, who is the master tin and copper smith that I work under, he dilutes it. So I think he does like 2 to 1. So 2 parts water, 1 part flux, and gets it really, really watery. And then we again apply it with just kind of a regular painter's brush to all the joints, but it runs really fast. You don't need a lot of flux. If I use the acro flux by itself without diluting it, I sometimes am also left with a stickier residue, and the tin doesn't flow very nicely. It just kind of looks messy and choppy. But for a really nice even tinning area, if you dilute it, it seems to run better. So Bob always dilutes it. I try and remember to dilute it. So that's that. When we do the big scale tinning in the pots that we make for house copper, we use the Harris Stay Clean. This particular flux we usually hook up to like a spray bottle and just spray it inside when the copper is over the heat towards the end of the heating process. Once the copper is pretty hot, we spray that on, watch it, wait for it to almost caramelize. Looks like the flux is caramelizing, and then we stick in the tin bar. This is one of the ones that we'll use sometimes. It's like 99.3 or 4 just tin, and then just a tiny bit like 0.6 or 7 of copper. That's it, lead free, nothing else. And really the only reason you'd use that tiny bit of copper is to help keep the bar strong and not quite so bendy. Pure tin tends to be soft no matter what. So a lot of times it'll say, and I don't know if you can see, but it says, lead-free solder. You always look for the lead-free if you're going to make food. But anyway, those are the fluxes that I have used with varying degrees of success and preference. I would love to hear what other people use and your successes and preferences and why, because this trade is all about sharing information and helping each other create the best products as possible. So comments, questions, advice, opinions, please feel free to add, and hope you have a good one. Thanks for watching.